It's week 2, and I'm happy to say I have not had a single piece of fried chicken. I think I've been following the food recommendations of my orthodontist pretty well so far, but I realize once you do get braces, your diet basically changes because you realize the foods that you used to eat that you didn't think you ate on a regular basis start to become a problem. Like, for instance, I used to have for breakfast some yogurt, honey, banana in there, and I'd always put some granola. The problem is that granola has now become so difficult to chew and digest that it's just uncomfortable and almost borderline painful, simply because my teeth have just become more numb. And I think a lot of that has to do with the braces physically moving the teeth, so they're sensitive. Even when you try to bite down on something, you can't feel the food, but it also becomes super uncomfortable to try to chew down. Not only that, but my teeth don't fully match up yet. I could try to bite down as hard as I can, but my teeth don't line up just because of the way the braces are. They're keeping my front 2 teeth from biting down all the way. So I have to be a little bit more wise with what I eat. On top of that, I've had 2 instances where, I've gone out to eat with my coworkers for lunch, and so I decided to try certain things to see if certain things would fit my diet. And I realized normally I get like this decent sized plate, where here in America, they tend to give you a lot of food per portion. So as I'm eating it, and you realize it's uncomfortable as you eat it, you're kind of asking yourself along the way, do I really need to take this next bite? Like, am I still physically hungry, or am I satisfied? Am I full? So in a weird, ironic way, it's helping me keep my eating habits in check, where I'm taking home half the food now. Like, I've done it twice already this past week. Gone out to eat once where we got tacos and then side of rice and beans, and I got 2 tacos. I only ate one of the tacos and half the sides, and then I really was like, I don't want to keep eating because it's just so difficult for me to keep eating at this point. So I boxed it, I took it home, and then I ate it over for dinner. And my stomach cues were still telling me I was satisfied and full, so I wasn't compromising anything of that nature. And then second time for breakfast, I had a meat lover's omelet, and came with a side of hash browns, and I kind of ate half of it and was kind of, do I really need to eat the rest of this right now? And I brought it home and ate it for dinner. Leftover breakfast stuff for dinner is very satisfying. But besides that, I've been in a habit of just bringing lunch for work, bringing in lunch from home. So I've had to kind of change it up, where normally I would maybe bring in something that would irritate my teeth a lot. So now my diet is really for lunch, tofu. I cook in tofu, I bake some sweet potatoes, I chop them up, and then I do some glazed carrots. And it's all soft enough to where I can kind of mush it around in the mouth, use the tongue if I need to. That may be a little bit too graphic for you, so I'll just stop right there. But the point being, right, especially when you're starting with braces, you have to figure what your diet's going to be right from the get-go, because it changes everything. So on top of that, on top of my lunches, I realized I've had to get a few different pieces of equipment. Now, there's 2 main things that have really helped me so far. And again, this is only my second week. Today's technically day 10. First up is this wonderful thing. So this is basically just like a mini blender, and I make smoothies with it. I go to Costco all the time. At Costco, I would just start to get frozen bags of fruit. Throw that in there, obviously, with some yogurt. I got a bag of apples, some bananas, and it's really easy to make. It takes me less than a few minutes to prep everything, throw it into the blender, and, much more healthy than eating typical other breakfast foods. And it's a drink. I don't have to chew it entirely. But then obviously when you're doing that, if you're doing a lot of berries, you get some seeds stuck in your teeth, so you have to go and floss it out, which, by the way, flossing is a nightmare. They give you these, and I would show you what they are if I didn't lose them already, but they're these like little loops where you kind of thread the floss in, and then you have to go into each gap of where the braces are so that you can floss between the teeth, because there's a freaking piece of metal in the way. So to help with that, I was recommended to get this thing. This is basically a water pick. I've known about these for years, obviously, and didn't consider that they would be really that all too helpful, because I was told that, flossing is kind of the superior way to clean between the teeth. But, when it takes you 20 minutes to floss your teeth, you kind of decide ways that can kind of help you out a little bit. So this is actually really surprisingly helpful. You just fill it with water, you follow the guideline, and it just cleans between the teeth. It flushes everything out. And I realize I'm doing that before I brush my teeth because it kind of gets rid of a lot of the chunks out of the way. That way my toothbrush can actually get to the gum line and to the teeth to clean it all off with the toothpaste and everything. So yes, those two gadgets have been immensely helpful for me. And on top of that, there's a third little thing, something that my orthodontist actually gave me, but I went out to get more, and that is this. This is basically just dental wax. And I didn't realize how helpful this would be because I realized after the first few days with this stuff, you start to get little sores in the mouth and you're wondering where the sores are coming from. And they're coming from the braces themselves just rubbing against the cheek. And it blew my mind that something like that, it shouldn't blow my mind because obviously there's something new in the mouth. So literally you just ball it up, you stick it on there, it smooths out the agitated surface, and then the sore eventually goes away. And I imagine as the weeks go on, the teeth are going to be feeling better and better and better. Right now, they're still pretty sensitive and sometimes very numb. I'm almost questioning whether the nerves have just died at this point. But truth be told, I'm still getting nutrients into my body. I'm still being satisfied and moving on with my life. I also figured, by the second day, I was going to, try something because my teeth didn't feel terrible as I thought they would be. So I'm going to try eating some empanadas, and that was a nightmare. A nightmare because the teeth are so sensitive. You're trying to bite down on each piece that you chew on so that you could break it down even further. I would just not recommend it. Continue with soft foods, very soft foods that you could just mush in your mouth or even friggin' stick in a blender and just suck up with a straw. All that to say, I knew that this would kind of be a challenge for me. And it was just something I knew I would have to bear, the challenge itself. And it's funny, in today's society, we always try to push away from discomfort and go towards things that make us feel better, like the recommendation to take Tylenol to, help with the pain inside the mouth. But, there's a growing body of evidence to show that embracing the things that scare us, whether it be discomfort or whether it be emotions and pain, right, can be a good thing for us. Again, in moderation and if done the right way. Like if you look at Stoicism, Stoicism, a lot of times people think is about suppressing your emotions and closer to this idea of toxic positivity. But when you look at the current guidelines for Stoicism today, they talk about Stoicism with a little s and Stoicism with a capital S. And Stoicism with a little s is what I would just described. It's kind of closer to that toxic positivity. And Stoicism with a positive S really emphasizes that emotions are okay. You want to acknowledge your emotions, your initial gut reaction, because that just demonstrates that you're human. That's something that every single human is going to experience. The thing is, at that point, once we experience the emotion, we can choose what to do with it. And lately I've been reading this book, How to Think Like an Emperor. And the first few chapters, goes into kind of the history of Stoicism, how it came about. And it talked about, a group, they were the Stoics, but then prior to that too, or along the same timeline, there were the Cynics, they called it. And the Cynics had this idea of almost purposeful endurance, purposefully putting yourself in uncomfortable situations just so you get a sense to tolerate it. And it's very similar to something happening today. I also read a book called The Comfort Crisis, and it talks about something called misogis. And misogis are essentially purposeful tasks that you put yourself through that are incredibly uncomfortable. And by going through something like that, whether you succeed or fail, it puts everything else into perspective in your life, letting you know that the things that you used to worry about in your life, the trivial day-to-day things, the things that we call first world problems, tend to not become so much problems anymore. You don't see them as significant, and they really just become more bearable. So in that way, I'm looking at these braces in that light. This is an activity that I'm choosing to put myself through, and as uncomfortable as it is, I'm still able to feed myself. I'm still able to keep my teeth clean. They are doing a body good by adjusting my teeth. And they're putting everything else in my life into perspective. You know, all the stuff that I used to worry about in the day, I'm wondering, well, is it as bad as, you know, your teeth being numb and not knowing if you're going to be able to eat anything? So, be that as it may, that's all very well and good, but how do we engage with that? You know, a lot of times we try to sit with the discomfort and it could be so unbearable. And that in itself is a challenge. So, there's another book that I've been reading called Forged in Darkness. And this was written by a graduate from the Pacifica Graduate Institute, which is a school that I've known about for years and years and years. I've considered going to it, getting a PhD in mythological studies, because that's essentially what they specialize in. They have pretty much Joseph Campbell's, or like a good portion of Joseph Campbell's collection. And Joseph Campbell is the guy who created the monomyth, Hero with a Thousand Faces, created this idea of the hero's journey, which is common amongst pretty much every culture throughout history, even though these cultures never got a chance to interact with each other. They talked about the hero starting out, you know, getting the call to action, going on this journey, going through the challenges, finding the Holy Grail, and then bringing the Holy Grail back to civilization to show everybody their teachings. Part of that journey of going through the challenges, right, is kind of going into that underworld. What does that look like? How do you get there? Do you fall into it? Is the journey easy for you? Is it a challenge? Do you lose a part of yourself? And there's also what they consider the death and rebirth, right? Every challenge that we go through in life, and this is something that I inherently believe, changes us in some way. You know, we always kind of go through something and we tend to think, you know, I want to get back to my old self. And I don't want to discount that that's not possible. That may very well be possible, getting to the normal self. But I look at it as, I've gone through the struggle. This is changing me in a way. I'm going to accept the discomfort that comes, learn to be okay with kind of this new reality. And that brings me a new sense of wisdom about life, a new understanding of the light versus darkness, you know, pain versus pleasure. And that's even something the Stoics talk about, right? They talk about the 4 virtues of life, the things that they try to practice every single day, which is wisdom, wisdom in everything that we do. And wisdom is supposed to help us in the other 3 virtues. So wisdom is like the ultimate virtue to practice. And then beneath that is the wisdom to know how to interact with other people, what they call justice, or knowing about fairness between yourself and other people. The wisdom to know how to interact with pain, meaning how to put up with pain, put up with adversity and discomfort in life just so you can grow and change. And the wisdom to balance your passions and your pleasures in life, meaning you can enjoy them in the right place and in the right time, the right amount. So knowing when you can engage in those pleasures and when you need to tamper off of them, what they called temperance. So with that, every single day I still kind of wake up and I get to my journal and I write down, you know, the thoughts that are currently in my mind, whether they be worries from yesterday, worries that are going to be happening today. And then I get into, if nothing else, the virtues. How am I going to be practicing these virtues today? How am I going to be practicing wisdom? How am I going to be practicing fortitude? How am I going to be practicing temperance? I read a little bit of the books and I kind of just go on with my day. And I'm realizing too, because I am going through this practice of changing my diet, because I simply have to with my teeth. You know, I'm eating more vegetables. I'm eating more healthy type foods, not really fried foods, obviously. My energy is much better. I think my moods are much more positive throughout the day. They're much more even keeled. They're much more leveled out, which is always a good thing. You know, the motivation to get up and do these videos has shifted a little bit more in the positive direction. And yeah, my outlook at work is more positive. My outlook with my clients is more positive, and I'm more engaged in trying to, you know, just get through life and get through every day-to-day activity, which is great. I think that's it for this week. Again, if you gotten to this point, thank you so much for watching. I plan to do these every single week. And let me know in the comments below if you've got braces right now, what your experiences are, any, I don't know, questions or concerns or comments that you have on anything that I said. And I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Take care and take care of yourself.